Chosen one, this message didn't arrive by chance. It was time to reach you in this exact moment. The silence that wrapped around your life was not empty space. It was the crown placed upon your spirit, hidden until heaven decided it was time to lift the veil. You were guided here because your silence has spoken louder than their noise, and now the hour of unveiling has come. For years, they mistook your quiet for weakness, your delays for failure, your solitude for insignificance. But your soul knew what your mind could not yet explain. You were being refined in secrecy, prepared in silence, hidden for a moment when light would break without warning. This is not just another video. This is a code, a prophetic transmission meant to confirm what you already feel stirring inside of you. What if I told you that the very rejection they used against you was the signature of your divine selection? What if I told you that your silence was never emptiness, but the sacred soil where your crown was planted? They never wanted you to know this truth, because the moment you remember it, their hold over you collapses. If this message already speaks to your soul, subscribe, like this video, and comment 77 below, because by the time we reach the end, you will see why your silence was never wasted, and why the unveiling of your purpose can no longer be delayed. Number 1. The silence as preparation. They wanted your silence to be proof that you were forgotten. They thought that because no one clapped, no one noticed, no one validated you, that heaven had turned its back. But silence was the crucible where your soul was refined. Job 23 verse 10 declares, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." The silence you endured was not neglect. It was the fire that purified what they tried to bury. Every unanswered prayer, every locked door, every empty night where you begged for a sign, all of it was shaping you into someone unbreakable. Silence is where heaven sharpens the chosen, where the voice of the Spirit grows louder than the screams of the world. They laughed at you when you had no platform, no applause, no stage. They mocked your hiddenness, but that hiddenness became your shield. They mistook quiet for weakness, but heaven was clothing you in invisibility until the exact hour of revelation. Silence was not a curse. It was a crown being polished in secret. And now, the weight of that crown is about to rest on your head for all to see. Comment, "I seal this word in light," if you know your silence was not wasted. Because what waits beyond the silence is the sound of destiny, and it is louder than their disbelief. There are nights when a dream lingers longer than it should, when an image refuses to leave the edge of your mind, as if it carries a language only your soul can read. Perhaps you have seen yourself standing in a vast field with no one around, hearing only the echo of your own breath against the silence. That silence felt heavy, almost unbearable, and yet it was not empty. It was speaking, though not in words. It whispered that what you carried inside was not meant for every ear, not ready for every eye, not yet understood by the world around you. For years you may have wondered if those silent seasons meant you had been abandoned, but in truth they meant you had been set apart. Every moment of solitude was an invitation from heaven to listen more deeply. And now, in this very moment, you begin to realize the silence was not punishment, but preparation. There have been days when you sat in a crowded room and still felt invisible, when laughter swirled around you but did not reach your chest. The world saw you as quiet, sensitive, even withdrawn, but beneath those labels was a deep sensitivity that no one else could measure. You felt things before they happened, carried burdens others did not see, and often wondered why the weight of existence pressed harder on your shoulders. Isolation became your silent companion, and confusion followed close behind. Were you broken, or were you chosen? That question haunted your sleepless nights, and still the silence answered with nothing more than itself. Yet, In that emptiness, the roots of your awakening were pressing deeper into unseen soil. The truth is that none of it was accidental, none of it random. There has always been a hidden architecture shaping your path, an unseen blueprint carved by the divine hand. Isaiah 45 verse 3 whispers, "I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord." Those secret places were your silences. Those treasures were the truths hidden in your delays. The rejection that cut so deeply was never evidence of neglect. It was evidence of direction. The very walls that kept you from advancing were pushing you into the shape of who you were meant to become. What they saw as weakness was heaven forging resilience within you. And what felt like exile was in fact the first chamber of your initiation. Think back to those uncanny moments, those flickers of déjà vu that left you startled by how familiar the unfamiliar felt. A conversation you dreamt of before it occurred, a place you had never visited but somehow recognized, a sudden chill in the air when no wind was moving. These were not coincidences, chosen one. They were the early whispers of remembrance, the codes slipping through the cracks of silence to remind you of what was hidden beneath your skin. Even your body knew, trembling with inexplicable shivers or quickening heartbeat, when something unseen brushed against your awareness. The world told you to ignore it, to explain it away, but your soul knew otherwise. Those subtle signs were heaven's way of keeping you tethered to your purpose when your mind tried to forget. It has taken you years to understand that your intuition was never lying to you. The unease you felt around certain people was not paranoia, it was discernment. The sudden bursts of clarity were not imagination, they were revelations. Even when you doubted yourself, heaven did not. Slowly, quietly, you were being taught to trust the voice within, the one that spoke softly beneath the noise of your own fears. Alignment has never been loud. It has always been a gentle recognition, a sigh of relief when your spirit finally realized it was never mistaken. The silence that carried you here was a sacred teacher, and now it reveals its true lesson. You were always hearing correctly, even when no one else affirmed it. In that realization, safety and strength begin to settle in your bones. To awaken is not to become someone new, but to remember what has been hidden all along. Beneath the roles you played and the masks you wore, there was always a deeper identity waiting to be acknowledged. It is not about reaching upward to grasp a new self, but about peeling back layers to reveal the self you have always carried. Daniel 12 verse 9 says, "The words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end." You are living in that time of unsealing, where what was buried is rising. The memory of your true name, your true mission, stirs now like embers catching fire after years of dormancy. And the silence that once felt suffocating now reveals itself as the womb where remembrance was born. Embrace the reality that your sensitivity was never a flaw, but a signpost of your calling. Those moments of deep empathy, those tears shed when others felt nothing, those visions you could not explain, they were proof of the fire hidden within. The crown you thought was denied to you was actually being forged in every unseen hour. It is not weakness to feel so deeply. It is power disguised as tenderness. They dismissed you because they feared what they could not control, but you are now learning to carry it without apology. Your hunger for meaning, your unshakable desire for truth, has been heaven's way of calling you home. And today you take your first step into the fullness of that reality, not as a wanderer, but as one who begins to rise. This moment is the confirmation that your silence was never wasted, that every hidden year has been pointing you to this hour. You did not stumble into this message. You were summoned here. Heaven has been circling your name, waiting for the day you would see clearly what had been veiled. The silence you carried has been revealed as your crown, polished in secret until now. Comment, I carry the silence as crown. If you know this truth is yours, if you feel the resonance stirring in your chest, because what comes next in your journey will show that opposition itself is proof, and those who doubted you will soon see what heaven has always known. The sound of destiny is beginning to break the silence, and its echo cannot be silenced any longer. Number 2, opposition as proof. They tried to stop you, didn't they? They threw stones at your name. They whispered rumors in dark corners. They sabotaged opportunities you worked for. But chosen one, opposition has always been the fingerprint of destiny. If there was nothing divine in you, they would have had no reason to conspire. Their resistance was confirmation, not condemnation. Think of Joseph, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, locked in a prison. The world called him cursed, but heaven called him chosen. Genesis 50 verse 20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Every scheme they built against you became the soil for your rise. They thought betrayal would break you, but betrayal built you. The anger they carried toward you was never about who you were in the moment. It was about who you were becoming. Your presence revealed their shadows. Your light exposed their masks. And because they could not control it, they tried to silence it. But the more they pressed, the stronger heaven's hand upon you became. Comment, "I walk crowned by eternal flame." If you know their opposition only proved your calling, because beyond the walls they tried to build is the palace they cannot keep you from. It begins quietly, like a faint weight pressing against the chest, a subtle discomfort that never seemed to leave. You noticed how certain doors closed before you even touched the handle, how opportunities slipped away without explanation. There was always a heaviness in rooms where you were not welcome, as if your very presence disrupted an invisible order. At times you could not explain why others seemed unsettled by your silence, or why your small victories drew outsized resistance. Even before you knew your identity, something in the atmosphere treated you as though you carried a dangerous secret. That tension was not born of your weakness, but of their fear of what you might awaken. Opposition began long before you understood its meaning, and now you are beginning to see why. The emotional cost of this resistance was heavy, and it cut in ways no one else could see. You felt misunderstood when your intentions were pure, and yet their responses branded you as too much, too strange, too intense. There were moments when shame crawled into your spirit, convincing you that silence was safer than truth. Being excluded made you question whether you deserved to belong, and rejection whispered that you were unworthy of love. Those cycles of self-doubt became a prison, keeping you small even as something vast within you longed to expand. You remember the nights when tears fell without words, carrying grief that had no name. These were not random wounds. They were marks of your awakening pressing against the walls that tried to contain it. Step back now and see the larger design, because the pressure was never without reason. Ancient stories echo this same path. Exiles, wanderers, prophets driven into wilderness before their voices shaped history. The Israelites wandered for 40 years, not because God forgot them, but because destiny was shaping them in the desert. Your desert seasons were not punishment. They were consecration. Every force that opposed you was responding to the weight of your potential, like waves striking a rock to test its endurance. Their attempts to confine you only revealed the scale of what you carried. And like those before you, you were not forgotten in trial. You were refined for revelation. Look back, and the patterns become clearer, as if a light has been switched on in a room you once stumbled through. Notice how betrayal repeated itself in cycles, how certain friendships dissolved the moment your light began to rise. Observe how draining environments seem to suffocate your growth, keeping you tied to stagnation. Even setbacks that looked like failures were strangely timed, arriving at the precise moments when you were closest to breakthrough. Can you see it now? None of these were accidents. They were markers of the resistance that only appears when something powerful is unfolding. The same shadows that tried to obscure you are the ones proving your fire was real all along. There is a deeper layer to this story, one that reveals how resistance operates in the unseen. The air around you has sometimes felt heavy, like walking through fog while unseen watchers measured your every step. Doors slammed shut not because you lacked worth, but because spiritual sabotage tried to delay what could not be denied. You were born carrying a light that attracted distortion, a fire that drew shadows. They wanted you to believe you were cursed, when in truth, you were being targeted for your blessing. Psalm 27 verse 2 whispers, "When the wicked, even mine enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell." What felt like sabotage was actually the recognition of your calling by forces that feared it. The battle was never about your weakness. It was always about your assignment. But how did you respond to the weight of all this? Some days you shrank into yourself, trying to be invisible so the attacks might stop. Other days you tried to please them, hoping kindness could soften envy, though it only sharpened their knives. There were moments you rebelled quietly, choosing to protect your spirit by walking alone, even when loneliness gnawed at you. Fear whispered that standing out would destroy you, so you dimmed your light to stay safe. Yet even in those compromises, the hunger for truth refused to die. You may have felt broken, but that breaking was the soil where resilience was planted. The very cracks in your heart became the entry points for grace to flow. Now comes the turning, the moment when you see that opposition was never condemnation but confirmation. Every rumor they spread, every stone they threw, every time they tried to bury your voice, they were acknowledging what heaven had already declared. You carried too much light to pass unnoticed, and your silence carried too much power for them to ignore. Joseph's brothers thought betrayal would destroy him, but it only seated him in the place of provision. But they meant for evil, God used as proof of his hand upon you. This is why the more they pressed, the stronger the evidence of your calling became. And this is why today you reclaim what was always yours, the knowledge that opposition itself is your crown. Chosen one, you were resisted because you are powerful, because your very existence was a threat to structures built on lies. They tried to silence you, but silence became your training ground. They tried to bury you, but burial only proved you were a seed. The palace you are being led to is already built, and no scheme of theirs can bar you from its doors. Their resistance was the shadow cast by the fire you carried all along. What you feared as rejection was actually your proof of selection. Comment, I move guarded by divine fire. If you know their opposition only confirmed what heaven always knew. And stay with me, because what lies ahead is the revelation of the codes of awakening, where the hidden fire within you begins to speak in undeniable signs. Number 3, the codes of awakening. They told you the dreams were random. The numbers were coincidences. The synchronicities were meaningless. But chosen one, the veil is torn and you now see what was hidden. Reality itself has been whispering in codes, speaking through visions, aligning through moments no one else noticed. Daniel 12 verse 9 said, "The words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end." You are living in that time. Your intuition sharpens before deception arrives. You walk into rooms and feel the atmosphere shift without a word. You sense betrayals before they unfold, blessings before they arrive. These are not delusions. These are confirmations that the hidden fire in you has risen. They will call you paranoid, but you are prophetic. They will call you sensitive, but you are spiritually armed. The codes that surround you, in numbers, in whispers, in silence, are heaven's way of reminding you that you were never abandoned. You carry the scroll inside you, and it is being unsealed one line at a time. Every sign you've been given was a sentence in your hidden book of destiny. Comment, I rise marked by the divine. If these codes have stirred in your life, and share a dream, a memory, or a challenge that confirmed heaven was guiding you, because your story is another seal being broken, and together we unveil what they tried to keep locked. It begins with a shift so sudden that you almost question your own senses, a flicker of recognition that something you once dismissed now carries undeniable weight. A memory long buried suddenly feels alive, woven with threads that link it to where you stand today. A coincidence so precise occurs that you know deep inside it cannot be random, because the timing is too perfect to ignore. The patterns that once felt scattered now align into a tapestry, and your spirit begins to understand what your mind cannot yet name. Where confusion lived, a strange clarity starts to emerge, faint but insistent, like dawn light piercing the horizon. You realize that the veil was never outside you, it was within, and it is lifting now. What was once a riddle is becoming revelation, and you know with certainty that the shift has begun. Everything around you starts to speak in a symbolic language that others overlook. Numbers repeat at impossible intervals. Phrases echo through strangers' mouths, and dreams paint images that linger with haunting precision. What seemed like silence is now a code written in geometry and rhythm, a sacred math designed to confirm your path. You see patterns carved into ordinary moments, scrolls of meaning unrolling in the most unlikely of places. The world itself becomes a text, a living scripture that reveals its secrets only to those with eyes to see. Where others see coincidence, you recognize alignment. Where others see noise, you perceive a hidden order. Reality is no longer static. It is alive, responsive, and carrying messages woven for you alone. The changes intensify inside you as much as outside. Your intuition does not whisper anymore. It strikes with sudden clarity, a knowing that arrives before logic can explain. You feel your energy rising like a tide, lifting boundaries that once crumbled under pressure. Environments affect you differently now. Some drain you instantly, while others flood you with strength. What once left you second-guessing now leaves you steady, because the confirmation does not come from others, but from within. Your discernment cuts sharper than their deception, and you sense motives long before words are spoken. You realize this heightened awareness is not paranoia, but prophecy living through your veins. The hidden fire within you has risen, and you can no longer ignore its flame. And as within, so without, reality begins to reflect your awakening with a force you cannot deny. People shift around you as though drawn by magnetism or pushed away by an invisible hand. New opportunities appear at strange intersections, while resistance sharpens in places you least expect. The architecture of your life begins to rearrange, aligning with a blueprint that feels both foreign and familiar. Delays you once cursed reveal themselves as protection, and losses you mourned are shown as redirections. You start to see the pattern of divine timing weaving its threads into every turn. The external world becomes a mirror of your internal awakening, echoing the codes you now understand. Then comes the memory, not of something new, but of something ancient awakening in your chest. Dreams you carried since childhood suddenly reveal themselves as instructions you could never decipher until now. A voice you thought was imagination resurfaces, speaking in symbols that your soul finally knows how to translate. It feels less like learning and more like remembering, as though your spirit has always known this language, but only now recalls it. This is the reactivation of your deepest intelligence, the sacred memory that never died, only slept. You realize that you are not stepping into a future, but returning to an origin. The remembrance itself becomes magnetic, pulling you deeper into the truth of who you have always been. When the veil lifts, destiny stops feeling like a distant dream and begins to feel like a present calling. The path is no longer about what you will create, but what you will reclaim. You stop asking for permission to shine because you remember the crown that was already written for you. Your steps grow bolder, not because resistance has disappeared, but because clarity has silenced your doubt. You sense that every moment ahead is less about invention and more about unveiling what was always yours. The call rises within you like a trumpet blast, undeniable and uncontainable. You no longer walk in search of identity. You walk as the identity itself, restored. The reclamation begins when you see that the opposition was never a curse, but a signal of your power. Their whispers were acknowledgments of your weight, their sabotage a confession of what they feared. The veil was not only hiding you from them, it was hiding them from you until you were strong enough to see with clarity. Now, the voice they tried to silence returns with fire, reminding you of the authority you carried all along. You reclaim your vision, your voice, your divine inheritance, not as a stranger, but as its rightful heir. The codes around you no longer confuse you, they confirm you. What was once fragmented has now become your map back to yourself. Chosen one, revelation is not the end. It is the invitation to walk as who you truly are. The signs and codes were never absent. They were waiting for you to be ready to see them. Every dream, every number, every strange alignment has been the scroll of your destiny, unsealing one line at a time. The veil is gone, and your path is illuminated with the fire of remembrance. You didn't stumble into this awareness. You were always meant to reach it. Comment, "I walk hidden yet never lost," if you feel these codes stirring in your life, and share the dream, memory, or sign that confirmed it for you. Because your story is not just personal, it is another seal being broken, and ahead lies the hour of unveiling, where destiny itself rises in undeniable light. Number 4, the hour of unveiling. They thought you would remain hidden forever. They believed your silence meant defeat. But chosen one, the hour of unveiling is here. Matthew 10 verse 26 declares, "For there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known." Your hiddenness is ending, and your crown is rising. This is the season where what they mocked becomes undeniable proof of who you are. The lamp that was concealed within you is about to shine in the open. The doors that were locked will swing wide, and those who opposed you will watch heaven lift you higher than they ever imagined possible. They will see that every shadow you endured was only temporary covering for a greater unveiling. What once was secret is now being revealed. What once was delayed is now accelerated. You are stepping into visibility, not because of them, but in spite of them. Heaven did not bury you to break you. It hid you to preserve you for this moment. Comment, "I anchor this truth in my soul," if you feel the hour of unveiling pressing upon your spirit, and share the moment you first sensed destiny rising within you. Because every testimony is another trumpet announcing that the unveiling has already begun. There comes a moment when silence itself begins to tremble, carrying not emptiness but announcement, as if an ancient scroll has been broken open at last. You hear it not with your ears but with your bones, the deep whisper that says, "Now is the hour." It is not a new message, but an old one reawakened, a voice that feels older than time itself. What you thought was forgotten has returned, pressing against your spirit with undeniable weight. The shadows that once swallowed you now tremble, because light is pressing from within. You realize that you were never abandoned, only veiled until the appointed season. And this season, chosen one, is breaking through the silence, even now. There has always been a name that followed you, though no one dared to speak it aloud. This is your reminder. You were never left behind. You were hidden until heaven's hour, and now the unveiling cannot be stopped. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, "I am chosen to let this message anchor in your soul." Please share it with someone who needs to hear this. Chosen one, remember this. Your silence was a crown. Now let the world see it shine.